All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Tuesday, October 13th. Overall, market breadth kind of on the crappy side. You could see from the indices over here, most of them went down throughout the session. SPY went down about 60 basis points. Q's about the same to finish flat. It kind of gave back all of that overnight gain. Once again, the overnight move is better than the intraday move for the indices. However, there was a lot of good trading opportunities in the growth area. Of course, if you kind of came in long, some of these names, you got off to a good start. But yeah, it's one of those situations where you just kind of have to think about, as I try to point this out at least a couple days in these end of day videos, that the overnight move is where most of the gains are made over time, over years. Buying the close, selling the open continues to be the trade that works year after year after year versus buying the open and sell the close. Why do I bring this up? Because I think a lot of day traders think otherwise. And you want to realize where the alpha is, regardless of what type of trader you are. So let's move on from that, because I cover this over and over and over. But just looking at the performance in these indices just makes me think of that. The VIX was up slightly again today, up 4%. So yeah, up to 26 today. Again, I think that's normal with the SPY down for the day. Again, like I said, some good opportunities, especially in growth. I want to look at that chart in just a second, growth versus value. But looking at today's performance, biotech very strong. That was one of your best performing. I think it was the best performing sector. Let me double check. Yeah, biotech XBI I think was the best performing sector. Also, the solar stocks, which underperformed yesterday, they came back a bit. Today. Retail was also strong. Names like Restoration Hardware were really strong today. And then the banks, just kind of interesting as we start earnings season. Nothing really different out of the banks. They were down pretty heavily today. KRE was down 3.1%. The bonds, which I didn't cover up here, they were strong. So that doesn't help. When interest rates go lower, that doesn't help the banks, so that probably contributed to it. It seems to be the same pattern over and over. Where did JP Morgan even, these banks are not even really, very much on my radar. I tried to trade in USB last week. That worked, and I got out of it pretty quickly. But yeah, you could see there's a bearish engulfing candle for JP Morgan, and it finished down 1.6%. So again, this seems to be the pattern with these names pre-market. The banks, they like to rally, and then they give back the gains. So look at this Citigroup, which was down 4.8%, sold off all session long on up pre-market. So BAC reports tomorrow. I did see like a $1 million option trade go up, but who knows what they're doing. We never know what their whole picture is. But it's just kind of interesting to see that type of a trade hit the tape the day before. This is trades. Where's my option activity channel? That was in here, right here. So 17,000 of the October 23rd, 25 calls for 64 cents. We'll see if that was an opening trade. They could, of course, be selling that, but it's a $1 million trade. I did not take that trade. I didn't do anything with that, but I'll be watching to see if they're right. So I mentioned growth versus value, right? And I mentioned that that banks, also energy companies, they underperformed pretty decently. They also were down, almost 3% on the session. So pretty ugly there again. The pot stocks were down today after making a nice move. I think the last couple days too. So a lot of these areas that are in downtrends. Remember, it's a lot. It's easy for, well, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier for names to bounce in downtrends, but very hard for them to change the trend. Much more difficult. You could see bounces in downtrends, but very difficult to actually change the trend, right? So I always try to keep that in mind when I'm looking at taking a shot at a counter trend trade, a name that's in a downtrend. Let's go ahead and I wanted to talk a little bit about value versus growth. This is large cap value versus growth. Started to outperform a little bit, but notice that it was all about growth again today. So this is large cap. If you want to see what the small cap value versus growth looks like too, I have that relationship chart. That is IWN versus, again, I've got value in the numerator, and kind of similar relationship going on here. Big outperformance for growth today, and the last couple days. So yes, today's price action was quite different than it was yesterday's. However, like, my trading day was better today. If you were in Amazon or Apple yesterday, you had a field day, right? You had a really great day. But once again with Apple, I didn't even read all the notes that came out from all the products. But it's the same story in trading over and over and over. You buy something into an event and you sell it either the day before the event or the event day itself before it starts. And you had the opportunity to do that in Apple. But this principle, it just, it doesn't even matter sometimes what the actual event is, right? We talked about that with Tesla. It was battery day. The stock ran into battery day, sold off on battery day. It's just one of those things that the expectations are always bigger and better, I would say 90% of the time, than the actual event. So Apple is still above, where it started the week, but it gave back that big green candle. So again, there's nothing wrong with the chart here. It didn't lose any of the moving averages. It didn't break back into value, but it was down 2.6% after a monster day yesterday. So that's the story with Apple. What I kind of concentrated on today was names like, this Net had follow through, right? We talked about that name yesterday. It was up another 4.7% today, and this name started, I believe, in the red this morning. Yeah, I mean, it was down a little bit, and I this was a really nice trade for me. By the way, this is how we line up our day every morning. I try to put out a watch list every day. And I was focused on a couple of them. PayPal from yesterday, that worked out beautifully. The PayPal trade, the swing trade that I put on yesterday. So I did some kind of interesting maneuvering today. So I could have done this with Net, but you could see I didn't even. I'm long Net in the what's called the Tribeca Trade Group portfolio. Which is in this channel, right? Which is just a trend following portfolio. So I've been long that Net for a while, but in the tactical, in my trading account, I like to be a little bit more tactical, and I got into this at 1020, and this was something I went into January because I figured I'd hold this. But hey, if somebody gives you, and I get this criticism sometimes from the chat room that, hey, is this trade going to be a swing trade or is it going to be a day trade? Well, if it's going to rally 4 or 5% from where I got in that day, then I'm going to take the gift and I'm going to put the money in my pocket, which is what I basically did today, right? So I got out of this, and I was going to roll this. I just figured tomorrow, I'm in no rush, and I could do that tomorrow. But getting out for 820, paid 590 for this. I mentioned PayPal. That was our setup. That was one of my favorite setups from the weekend watch list. Let's see, how is the weekend watch list doing, by the way? Yeah, up 3.4% for the week. Looks like Crowd is the best name from the weekend watch list. PayPal, Amazon, JD, and so on and so forth. Chipotle was a nice trade for me too today. That name was up 3.4% for the day. So, PayPal was, kind of just slow the last few days. Sorry, not the last few days, but, basically for the beginning, towards the end of September, beginning of October, it was kind of slow, but once it made its, move and turn out of value, again, for me, once they get out of value, right, they're getting out of the range, and they become much more interesting to me. So I went long yesterday, PayPal. I wasn't able to hit a target. I almost hit a target yesterday, but very strong day for this name, up 3%. So, I had a number of trades that went well. LI, which was a name that I added to yesterday, that I started yesterday, took target 2 in that name. And maybe I'll just take one more target in that one. I got into some docu early on. So yeah, notice what I did with I'll go over the docu chart in a second, but I got out of docu, and then I get comfortable when I'm in stock. Like I always get a little bit rushed when I'm in an option position because they move faster. You have leverage, right? You got a lot of things going on when you're in, especially this is a short-term position, right? November is short-term. I love to say this to some traders because some traders who are only trading super short-term, which is weeklies or the next week out. But November are also short-term options, right? It's only a month and a week, or less than a week, until less than a week until November becomes front month. But that's a short-term option position. So I'm very quick, when I've got profits. And then what I like to do is, take the position and roll it into some stock, right? I'm taking the leverage out, and I got the nice pop, but I don't think, docu may not be done. Right, it's just getting above value here. So, and I've got a nice easy level to say, hey, I can get out. I have a stop price. I'll have a stop price at 234 on now the stock position. I did the same thing with PayPal because I want to hold PayPal into when they're going to report earnings, which is a couple weeks away on November 2nd. So I want to hold a piece of PayPal into that event. Remember, for me, I'm looking for a lot of trades where they could run into earnings. I think younger traders, they want to trade the uncertainty of earnings because it's exciting. I don't need the excitement factor. I'm in it to make the money, right? And most of these names, they're going to, if they're a very strong name and if there's high demand for the name, they are going to run into earnings, and then they might not do anything on earnings, right? We see that a lot of times. So I want to own that stock. I know it's not as sexy as going long on earnings day, but I'll tell you, you can make some good money pre-positioning in some of these names, right? Netflix was our trade from last week. This has been making a nice move. Netflix reports next week. However, look at the move that it's making this week, right? 502 to 554, from where we basically started the month. So, very strong looking there. Facebook is a name that I threw on at the end of the day. It's close to getting above value. It's close, but you're going to have earnings in about 2.5 weeks in Facebook. And if you look at the 1 hour chart, I like this little flag that it's putting in here, and I've got a target, right? Maybe this thing can get all the way up to 295. I think that's a really high target to shoot for, but it's got a couple weeks. And these names, the other thing that I think some of these names will do is that they'll trap you out of an earnings. Like if you're, again, where I like to play earnings is basically in a name that hasn't done much, that's been consolidating for a long time. I don't want to buy a name after it's gone up 20%, into earnings. So, we'll see how that shakes out with some names for earnings. But I've had that happen to me a number of times, right? Where you're like, okay, I want to play Amazon for earnings, and it rallies like crazy, right? And then by the time you get to the earnings date, you're like, oh, I don't, how am I going to go long for earnings after it's went up, X amount, in the last 2 weeks before earnings? So again, that's what I'm trying to capitalize on. And yeah, so I put some docu stock on, PayPal on, which I already said. XHB, really nice. This was a nice, easy swing trade over the last week. I just decided to take this off today. I just kind of ran out of targets. But yeah, nice move out of this. Was playing this breakout of here. Slow mover, but worked quite nicely. There was a lot of opportunity. I saw a lot of similar moves being made in that growth space. This was a name that was brought to my attention, but nice consolidation here, and then boom. All right, it reminds me a little bit of what happened with Datadog. Right, similar. Right, big move out of consolidation, consolidated. For almost a week. or around a week, I should say. And then it popped and took that next leg higher. So I like that what's going on there. Another name that was brought to my attention today too, like DT, that's another name, right? That's kind of breaking out of some consolidation too. But I think if you look, you'll find more and more of these types of setups. What you have to do is kind of, make sure that you're not putting on too many names, right? You want to make sure that you can manage your system very well and stay disciplined. But look at this one too, right? And again, of course, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not giving advice or recommendations. Here's our risk disclaimer in front of you. So just kind of giving some examples. But Restoration Hardware made a really nice move today. So again, a lot of names that are outside of that value space, outside of energy and banks, really strong. Look at this Melly out to 52-week highs. I believe that's all-time highs in Melly. Crowd, I forgot to mention then too, out to all-time highs. So I'm still holding a very small piece now at this point in CrowdStrike, but another name that was up 4.7 today. So I'm very pleased, obviously, with how today, I wasn't even expecting that much, coming into today. And I just said, hey, well, I'll trade what's in front of me. I'll look for some opportunities as I see them today. And they've revealed themselves quite nicely. I would watch this SE for tomorrow. Remember, it had this reversal bar yesterday. However, you kind of have to use if you use candlestick patterns like I do, you have to, also I like to make sure that I'm watching these with the short-term moving averages. Case in point, right? You would look at this and you'd be like, oh, that's a nasty looking candle, which it is. But it didn't lose any of the momentum, right? It didn't lose the 5-period moving average. So it's still above there. And if you look for the week, right, on the 1-hour chart, which I love to look at 1-hour charts to kind of give you a shorter term setup here, but watch this thing as long as it stays above 171.80. Could look to make that move higher. So that's one I'm definitely will be watching for tomorrow, and I still have a position in that one. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Again, kind of taking things one day at a time. I mentioned this late at the end of the day in the trading room. For me, this is a nice time to withdraw a little bit of money from my trading account. I'm up nicely for the month of October, and I want to just make sure that I tuck some of that away. That's been a great strategy for me in 2020. I took a lot of money off the table, withdrawing it out of my trading account. I did that a couple times in January of this year, so it helped me. February was a down month for me, but it wasn't really that bad considering that I took I took a decent portion of my cash balance that's sitting in my trading account and took it out. Right, so if you're having a really good month so far, we're not even halfway through the month of October, and I think this is a great place in my opinion, right, to take some extra cash out of your trading account, and then set the next goal, right? Set the goal to get your trading account up to basically back to where it was once you take the money out. So that strategy helped me a lot this year. When I'm up a lot, when I'm feeling confident and really good, I like to take I'd like to withdraw some money out of my trading account. All right, guys, thanks, and have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.